Today I would like to invite you to listen to the Dhammapada of the Buddhist Sakyamuni, the 184th verses from the Buddhist scriptures on the YouTube channel Thien Thai in the USA. In the quiet space of this teaching, we turn our hearts toward a profound truth spoken by the Buddhas of all times. The verse says, "Forbearing patience is the highest austerity. Nibbana is supreme, say the Buddhas. He, verily, is not a recluse who harms another, nor is he an ascetic who oppresses others." This teaching is not merely words to be remembered. It is a mirror for the mind. It is a path for transformation. It is a reminder that the highest spiritual practice is not found in self-torture, nor in harsh discipline, nor in outward show of renunciation. Instead, the true path is rooted in a heart that does not harm, a mind that does not oppress, and a spirit that learns to endure with wisdom and compassion. The Buddha speaks of patience as the highest austerity. This patience is not weakness. It is not silence born from fear. It is not suppression of emotion. It is the strength of a mind that understands the nature of change, the law of karma, and the suffering that arises from hatred. When anger arises, the world feels as if it is burning. When resentment grows, the heart becomes a prison. But when patience is established, the fire is cooled, and clarity returns like a calm moon after storm clouds pass. To understand this verse deeply, we must look at the meaning of true renunciation. Many seekers in ancient India believed that spiritual power came through extreme practices. Some would stand in the heat of the sun until their bodies weakened. Some would fast until the body collapsed. Some would practice painful rituals, believing suffering itself was holiness. But the Buddha, through direct insight, revealed something far more subtle and far more profound. The purity of the mind is not achieved by hurting the body or by harming others. Purity is achieved by uprooting greed, hatred, and delusion. The phrase, "Nibbana is supreme," points to the highest peace. Nibbana is not a place. It is not a heaven located somewhere in space. It is the extinguishing of the fires of craving, aversion, and ignorance. When these fires are extinguished, the heart becomes cool. It becomes free. It becomes unbound. This freedom cannot be taken away by others. It cannot be destroyed by circumstance. It arises from understanding reality as it is. Now we come to the teaching that he is not a recluse who harms another. This is a radical statement. It challenges the idea that outward appearance defines spiritual life. A person may wear robes, may shave the head, may live in solitude, but if their heart still carries anger and their actions still cause harm, then they have not truly entered the path of renunciation. The true recluse is one who abandons harm in thought, word, and deed. Likewise, nor is he an ascetic who oppresses others. Oppression can appear in many forms. It can be physical, emotional, or verbal. It can appear as domination, control, or cruelty. Even subtle oppression, such as harsh speech or judgmental thinking, creates suffering. The Buddha's teaching points us toward a life where spiritual practice and compassion are inseparable. To bring this teaching to life, the ancient tradition preserves a profound story that illustrates the meaning of patience as the highest austerity. This story is known in Buddhist tradition as the tale of the patient ascetic in a past life of the Bodhisattva, when he practiced the perfection of patience under extreme provocation. Long ago, in a time when kings ruled vast lands and sages wandered in forests seeking truth, there lived an ascetic who had withdrawn from worldly life. He lived in simplicity, cultivating kindness, restraint, and deep meditation. He did not seek power or recognition. He sought understanding of truth. His heart was gentle, like a clear lake untouched by wind. At that same time, there was a king known for his pride and temper. He enjoyed pleasures and authority, but his mind was easily disturbed. He was suspicious of holy people and often tested them with cruelty, believing that true wisdom must prove itself under suffering. One day, while the ascetic was meditating in a forest grove, the king arrived with his attendants. The king asked the ascetic what power he possessed and why people respected him. The ascetic replied calmly that he sought no power, only inner peace and understanding of truth. The king, not satisfied with this answer, believed the ascetic was either deceiving him or hiding secret strength. Driven by anger and desire to assert dominance, the king subjected the ascetic to terrible trials. According to the traditional story, the king ordered that the ascetic be harmed, believing that if the ascetic became angry or fearful, it would prove he was no different from ordinary men. Yet the ascetic did not respond with hatred. Even in the face of great pain, his mind remained steady. He reflected on the impermanence of the body and the importance of compassion for all beings, including the one causing harm. Instead of hatred arising, he felt a deep sorrow for the ignorance that led beings to commit cruelty. He understood that the king was driven by delusion, believing that power and violence could bring truth. In his heart, the ascetic extended compassion even toward his tormentor. This was not passive submission. It was a powerful inner freedom. The body may have been affected, but the mind remained untouched by hatred. Through this profound endurance, the ascetic demonstrated the perfection of patience. He did not see the king as an enemy in an ultimate sense. He saw him as a being trapped in ignorance, bound by craving and confusion. This vision transformed suffering into wisdom. Instead of reacting with anger, he remained grounded in understanding. This story is not meant to glorify suffering itself. It is meant to show the strength of a mind that does not multiply suffering through hatred. Pain may arise in life due to conditions, but suffering deepens when the mind reacts with aversion. The ascetic broke this chain. He did not allow anger to take root. When we reflect deeply on this teaching, we begin to see that patience is not simply waiting. It is not merely endurance. It is a form of inner awakening. It is the ability to remain present without being shaken by praise or blame, gain or loss, comfort or pain. It is the foundation of wisdom because a disturbed mind cannot see reality clearly. The Buddha emphasized that harming others is never part of the spiritual path. Even if one claims to seek enlightenment, if their actions bring harm, they are moving away from truth. The path is defined not by extreme behavior, but by wholesome intention. The presence of non-harming is the sign of genuine spiritual maturity. In daily life, this teaching becomes practical and immediate. When someone speaks harshly to us, the mind may want to respond with equal force. When injustice is experienced, anger may rise quickly. When disappointment appears, resentment may linger. But the Dharma invites us to pause inwardly and observe the arising of these emotions without being controlled by them. This is the beginning of patience. Patience does not mean accepting injustice blindly. It means responding without hatred. It means acting with clarity rather than emotional reactivity. A mind rooted in patience can still take action, but that action is guided by wisdom rather than anger. As we continue to contemplate this verse, we begin to understand why the Buddhas declare Nibbana as supreme. Because only in Nibbana is all inner burning fully extinguished. There is no anger to fuel suffering. There is no craving to create dissatisfaction. There is no delusion to distort reality. It is the ultimate freedom from inner conflict. Thus, this teaching becomes a gentle invitation. It asks us to examine not only our actions, but the intention behind them. It asks us to look deeply into how often harm arises in subtle ways through words, thoughts, or attitudes. And it guides us to a life where patience becomes strength, compassion becomes action, and non-harming becomes the natural expression of wisdom. When we look closely at the mind, we begin to see that suffering does not arise only from external conditions. It arises most powerfully from within, through reactions that repeat themselves without awareness. A single harsh word can echo in the mind for days when it is held with anger. A small insult can grow into a mountain of resentment when it is nourished by thought. In the same way, a moment of patience can dissolve what many moments of conflict might otherwise expand. The Buddha's teaching on patience as the highest austerity points directly to this inner laboratory of experience. Austerity here is not about punishing the body. It is about training the mind not to be enslaved by reactive emotion. This training is subtle because anger often appears justified. It arrives wearing the clothing of righteousness, saying, "I am right, therefore I must react." But the Dharma gently asks us to look deeper than that surface certainty. In truth, the mind that reacts in anger is not free. It is conditioned. It is pushed by habit, shaped by past impressions, and fueled by the illusion that control over others can bring inner peace. Yet no amount of controlling external conditions can bring lasting calm if the inner fire remains. This is why the Buddha declares that Nibbana is supreme, because Nibbana is not achieved by changing the world, but by understanding it so deeply that the causes of inner burning are extinguished. When craving fades, when aversion loses its grip, when ignorance is seen clearly, the heart naturally becomes still. This stillness is not emptiness in the ordinary sense. It is clarity without disturbance. To understand the living power of this teaching, we continue the traditional narrative that illustrates how patience is tested not in comfort, but in confrontation. In the same ancient tradition, the ascetic who embodied patience was not respected by all who saw him. While some were inspired by his calm presence, others misunderstood it as weakness. In a world where strength was often measured by dominance, gentleness was mistaken for vulnerability. Because of this misunderstanding, trials often came to those who walked the path of non-harming. One day, after the earlier encounter with the king, the ascetic continued his life in the forest, living with simplicity. He would meditate beneath trees, walk mindfully along forest paths, and share kindness with any traveler who came near. His presence became known among villagers, not because he sought attention, but because those who met him felt a quieting of their own hearts. However, not all who heard of him came with respect. Some came with curiosity mixed with doubt. Others came with pride, wishing to test whether such serenity was real or merely a performance. Among these visitors was a group of people who believed that spiritual strength must always show itself through visible power. They thought that if a person is truly awakened, nothing should disturb them, and therefore they attempted to disturb him intentionally. They spoke harsh words, created distractions, and attempted to provoke emotional reactions. Yet the ascetic remained steady. He did not respond in kind. He did not reject them with anger. Instead, he observed their actions as one might observe passing weather. Storms may come, but they do not define the sky. In the same way, words may arise, but they do not define the awareness that hears them. The deeper insight here is that patience is not suppression. It is awareness without entanglement. When anger is suppressed, it remains inside, fermenting silently. But when patience is cultivated through understanding, anger is not given the conditions to grow. It dissolves at its root because the mind no longer feeds it with identification. The visitors eventually became tired of their own behavior. They expected resistance, but they encountered absence of resistance. This absence was not emptiness in a negative sense, but fullness of composure. In that silence, some of them began to reflect on their own intentions. Why did they feel the need to disturb someone who was at peace? What was missing in their own hearts that required them to break the peace of another? In this way, even without words, the ascetic became a teacher. His patience was not passive, it was instructive. It revealed to others the contrast between agitation and stillness. The Buddha's words in this verse remind us that a true recluse is not defined by appearance or ritual, but by non-harming. This means that spiritual life is measured in how we treat others in moments of irritation. It is easy to be gentle when life is pleasant. It is far more revealing to be gentle when life is uncomfortable. In modern life, this teaching becomes even more relevant. We are constantly exposed to conditions that test patience. In families, disagreements arise. In workplaces, misunderstandings occur. In society, opinions clash. The mind is frequently asked to choose between reaction and understanding. If we respond without awareness, we often create cycles of harm that extend beyond the original event. A harsh word leads to another harsh word. A misunderstanding becomes conflict. Conflict becomes division. But if patience is present, the cycle can be interrupted at its earliest point. This interruption is the beginning of freedom. The Buddha does not ask us to become passive observers of life. Rather, he invites us to become conscious participants who do not add suffering to suffering. Life will contain difficulty. This is the nature of conditioned existence. But suffering is multiplied when the mind resists reality with anger and hatred. When we examine anger closely, we see that it always carries a desire for things to be different from what they are. This desire creates tension. That tension seeks release, often through speech or action. But the release that comes through harm does not resolve the deeper cause. It only spreads the disturbance outward. Patience, as taught in this verse, is the art of holding that tension without allowing it to become destruction. It is the ability to remain centered while emotions rise and fall. This centering is not rigid. It is flexible like water, which yields without losing its nature. The more we understand this, the more we begin to see why the Buddha emphasized non-oppression. Oppression is not only physical control. It is also emotional domination, verbal cruelty, and psychological pressure. Any action that diminishes the dignity or well-being of another being moves away from the Dharma path. A life guided by this understanding becomes lighter. Relationships become clearer. Speech becomes more mindful. Actions become less reactive. The mind slowly learns that peace does not come from winning arguments or asserting dominance. Peace comes from releasing the need to harm. As this realization deepens, we begin to glimpse the meaning of renunciation in a more refined way. Renunciation is not only leaving behind material life. It is letting go of the inner compulsion to react with hostility. It is the renunciation of hatred. In this sense, every moment becomes a field of practice. Each interaction becomes an opportunity to either reinforce old habits or cultivate awakening. The choice is subtle but continuous. Thus, the teaching of the Buddha in this verse is not distant philosophy. It is immediate guidance for the lived experience of the mind. It shows us that the path to liberation is walked not through extraordinary acts, but through ordinary moments met with extraordinary awareness. In this way, patience becomes the quiet strength that supports all other virtues, and non-harming becomes the natural expression of a mind moving toward freedom. Nama Amitabha, blessed to all. I hope to bring this merit towards all disciples and sentient beings, all of whom will attain Buddhahood. Please click like, share, and subscribe to help me grow my YouTube channel. Thanks you for watching my video.